and welcome to another video. So this one is all about Agatha Christie's Death in the Clouds. So I think, right, how many have we got? How many have I read? This is the 12th book in the Poirot series. So I'm obviously reading them through, but obviously I've only done a few episodes. I think this might be the 3rd episode that I've put on here. So this one is set in a plane. So we have like a list at the beginning of what seat numbers, who sat in what seats, and there's like a little map there of the plane as well. We are going to try and solve this before Poirot does. Obviously we know, like with all Agatha Christie's, this is a locked room mystery. It's going to be someone that's on this plane that has done the murder, and we are going to try and figure it out before Poirot does. So this video will contain spoilers. The only videos that contain spoilers on my channel are the Agatha Christie videos, by the way. So just to bear that in mind, there is spoilers going forward. I've got some paper. I plan on writing a lot, so it's 2 A4 pages I've like put together to create like a little booklet. Got a pen, got a steaming cup of tea. I need to hold it by the handle. This is a Walking Dead mug from back in the day. So yeah, steaming cup of tea, got the book, pen, paper. Let's get started. Okay, so I've read chapter 1. It's only like 22 pages. We've kind of got an idea of some of the people. So we've been introduced to Jane Grey, who is sat in seat 16, the furthest away from the body, but she is facing towards the back. So you've basically got 4 sets of seats at the front where they're facing each other, and then you've got like 2 rows that side, 3 rows that side. They're all facing the front. So the 2 seats, if you can see, on the very end is actually facing all of the other passengers. So Jane Grey is looking towards the back of the plane where this body is, but she's the last person on the plane. So she gets on the plane and she basically states that there are some people that are already seated and there are some people that have walked towards the back where there's like the toilets and something else is towards the back. So she's the last one on there, but it doesn't state which ones are already seated or anything like that. We also find out a bit more about her. So she's a hairdresser and she won some money. So she decided to do this trip to Le Pinette, I think it's called, in Paris. Well, she did that holiday and then she stopped off in Paris, sorry, Le Pinette, and then stopped off in Paris. And then this plane is like from Paris coming back, bringing everyone back. So we find out that while she was on holiday, she was gambling in the casino there. And on the last day, she was basically gambling, and the bloke who she was up against gave her the winnings, pretty much, so that she could have the winnings. So she ended up basically making her holiday like a couple of days longer. And now she's on this plane, and then we find out that the person sat directly opposite her, so she's in the seats of 4, where there's like 4 seats facing each other. One directly opposite her in seat 12 is Norman Gell, and he happens to be the bloke who gave her the money in the casino when they were gambling. So she obviously has a thing for him. And at one point, Poirot does notice that Jane Grey has a thing for the bloke sitting opposite her. But she's trying not to look at him, doesn't want to get into conversation with him. We also see a little bit about Lady Horbury, I think is how you say her name, the Countess of Horbury, and Venetia Kerr. They are sat opposite each other, having this like conversation like over the top, and then you're seeing like their inner thoughts where they both dislike each other, and they have this connection by someone called Stephen, who's not on the plane. So I think that Lady Horbury is with Stephen or married to Stephen, and at one point there could have been like an affair with Venetia Kerr. But we're also seeing that Lady Horbury is not a very nice person, and she snaps a nail or something and then demands that her maid, who is sat in the other cart, has to come and collect her bag, bring it to her, all of this. She's not very nice to her maid. She doesn't come across as a very nice person. And then we're seeing like a little bit, we find out about Dr. Bryant, who is in seat number 10, right next to Poirot. So we know that he's a doctor, and his inner thoughts is basically him trying to decide on what choice to make. It seems like it's like a life choice that he's kind of contemplating. And then we have Daniel Clancy, which is in seat number 8. And he's a writer of detective stories. So that's the people. We did also see the two Duponts as well. So Armand and Jean, I think they're father and son. But we don't really know anything too much about passengers, and also not all of them have been noted. We haven't heard anything from James Ryder, who is sat in the seat directly in front of the body, and is obviously the closest to the body. We've not heard anything about him yet. So I kind of feel like he's going to be like the red herring, as it were. Like, he's going to be the one that you're thinking it is, because one, he's close to the body, one, nothing is really known about him compared to the others. He's not had an introduction at all, whereas all the others have. And also, we don't know anything about Madame Giselle, but who is the person who dies, apart from at the very end of this chapter, we know that she's already dead. So it's interesting. From chapter 1, the first 22 pages, it's interesting that we don't know much about James Ryder, which I think there's a reason for that. So I'm going to continue on now, and we'll see how we go. Okay, 2 chapters in. We know how she was killed. It looks like it was a native thorn that was shot from a blowpipe that's used by certain tribes. So it looks like that someone has basically shot it across and aimed for her, and obviously it has poison on the end, and that's what's killed her, it's hit her in the neck. We've heard a little bit about Henry Mitchell, who is the senior steward on the aeroplane. He's the one that finds the body as well, and he does make a note of saying that Madame Giselle has done a few of these trips, and he's seen her a few times and knows that she's a good tipper and she tips them well. But it seems that it was about 30 minutes since she's passed until she is found dead, and we know that how she's killed. So we have that bit of information. I don't know how that's connected to anyone, by the way, but we're going to carry on. Okay, it's chapter 3 done. We're on page 55. We're flying through this. So what have we learned in this one? We have Clancy, who was in seat 8. Okay, so Daniel Clancy. We know that he actually had one of these blowpipes before when he was researching for a book. So we know that. And he did actually get out of his seat and go to the back of the plane to get something from his coat pocket. And I kind of feel like it's too obvious. So I don't think it's him, because it's too obvious. There's too much on the emphasis of the fact that he's had a blowpipe before, he knew what it was. So yeah, I kind of feel like it's a bit obvious. Another person who went to the back of the plane is the maid of Lady Horbury. And Lady Horbury is acting kind of suspicious. She's the most angry person on the plane when they're told they have to wait for the police. She's, at one point, you can see that her hand is shaking when she's trying to take a cigarette. So she kind of seems very nervous. So it could be a possibility that she's called for her maid to come along and has asked the maid to kill on her behalf. So there is that. There is also a connection with the wasp. And Poirot keeps asking who saw the wasp. And Clancy does say that just after the steward gave him his coffee, he noticed the wasp. So obviously I don't know whether the wasp was put in, like let to go around the plane just as like a like deterrent or a distraction, more so the word, a distraction whilst the dart is flying through the air. So there is that, but there seems to be quite emphasis on this wasp. And one of the DuPont, either the father or son, one of them killed the wasp. And Clancy does say that when he got given his coffee by the steward, that's when he noticed the wasp. And then I kind of thought, oh, hang on a minute, the steward was apparently the last person to speak to the deceased as well. So there is that. Also, interestingly, they do actually find the blowpipe, and it's found tucked behind Poirot's seat. So he's in seat number 9. So the seat right next to him is 10, which is Dr. Bryant, who is the one that gets called over to confirm the death. And the 2 seats behind is by the DuPonts. DuPont, is that how you say the name? The father and son. So it could be one of them 3 because they were the closest to the seat. And if you look where the seat is on the map, it's like by the window. So that's interesting. So it could be one of them 3 because I kind of feel like it's making it too obvious about it being Clancy. Okay, I finished chapter 4. I apologise that the last clip kind of just ended very quickly and abruptly. The window cleaner turned up. So I think I was saying that it just didn't seem like it could be Clancy because it was just too obvious. So now this last chapter, chapter 4, is like the inquest, or like the jury is being put in place. And it's just given information about the fact that she died from poison by a tree snake, and from this blow dart, it was definitely how she died. And then we're kind of just hearing from each of the passengers of the plane, and they're all saying they didn't see anything, they don't know anything about her. Anyway, we have learnt from someone like a that wasn't on the plane, but we have heard from someone that Madame Giselle was also known as Madame Morissette. That's her real name, and she was the best known moneylender in Paris, and she only ever lended to wealthy, high up people. She had to keep secrets all the time because these people couldn't be known to be lending or borrowing money. So that's kind of given me the impression that we're going back to Lady Harbury. And during the inquest as well, when they were saying who did you see go back to the back of the plane, the maid of Lady Harbury went to the back of the plane to get a bag for Lady Harbury because she didn't want to get up and do it herself. So in my opinion, I'm still seeing it as the maid doing it on behalf of Lady Harbury. But it never got brought up in the inquest. It never got touched on. Nobody has said about the maid going to the back of the plane, which I think is a bit weird. So I don't know whether it's, Agatha Christie making us think, oh, hang on a minute, the maid doing it for Lady Harbury because Lady Harbury has borrowed money, and maybe that's why both her and Madame Giselle were on the plane. Maybe Madame Giselle is trying to get the money back that she's lent. Something to do with money, something to do with Lady Harbury because she is so wealthy and she is a lady, and the fact that no one is saying about how the maid went to the back of the plane. But we're only on chapter 4. We're only that far in. We've got all of this. So I'm thinking as well, I think maybe that's just too obvious. How is it so obvious to me, but nobody else is mentioning the fact that the maid went to the back of the plane? And why am I connecting dots here, putting these things together, that it's Lady Harbury because she's wealthy, and we know that Madame Giselle was the most well-known moneylender in Paris. It's all seeming too obvious still. we're going to keep going. Okay, so I've just finished chapters 5 and 6. So chapter 5 was basically Jane Grey and Norman Gale. They basically meet up at a coffee shop. They're just discussing things. They kind of take each other off the suspect list because they were just watching each other the whole time, and they both say how they know it's not the other person, they know it's not them. They could be working together, could be a little, you know, thing that they're doing together. But I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that that is probably not either one of those. So that crosses off 2 suspects. In chapter 6, we kind of have Poirot and a couple of the detectives sitting down together and figuring things out. We learn about a daughter who's about 24, 25. She's set to inherit everything, but she doesn't seem to have any connection to the case. So they kind of quickly take her off the suspect list themselves. But obviously there could be someone on the plane that knows the daughter. So they go back to this blackmailing situation. So with Madame Giselle, how she would lend money, she would obviously blackmail, she would know some information so that she knew that she would get the money back. So there's obviously people that would really not want her to give out information. And she had this maid called Elise, and Elise had the instructions that if anything was to happen to Madame Giselle, she needed to go into the safe that she had the combination for and to burn everything, all the papers that are in that safe. So obviously all those papers kind of had a correspondence to all these wealthy people that she had lent money out to. So she's basically trying to show that she's loyal to these people. So I'm starting to think it's definitely someone that's wealthy. I think it's too obvious. It's obvious if it's Lady Harbury. But obviously someone else that was on there that was very wealthy was, what's her name? Venetia Kerr, who was obviously talking to Lady Harbury. They kind of don't like each other, but they were obviously over the top friendly with each other. So yeah, we're still back into this position of not really fully knowing who. But obviously we know now more information about how Madame Giselle was running her business, and also learning about this daughter and about her own maid, but the maid wasn't on the plane either. So yeah, not a lot learnt, but we are getting through this fairly quickly actually. On page 91 I've got a bit of stuff to do, and then I'll go back. The next chapter, chapter 7, seems to be quite a large chapter. We've got Poirot and the 2 detectives. They're going to be basically just like sifting through probabilities, which is the chapter title. So they're obviously going to be throwing thoughts back and forth. So that should give a bit more of an indication of what Poirot is leaning towards. So yeah, we'll see how that one goes. But I'm enjoying this so far, actually. I'm enjoying it very much. So I want to know what the connection with the wasp is, whether it was just a distraction on the plane for the passengers. But yeah, I'm going to do a little bit, and then I'll probably read a couple more chapters this afternoon, and then I'll probably finish it tomorrow. So we're on Tuesday at the moment. So this evening I'm going over to my nan and granddad's, as it's my granddad's birthday today. So I'm going to go visit them, and then I'll go home, head home, have some dinner with Paul, see what happens this evening. But yeah, that's the plan, is to read a couple more chapters at least today, and then finish it tomorrow. Hello, we're on to another day. We are now on Wednesday. Excuse the hair. I got out of the shower. I got face wash in my hair. Oh, it was all going on. Anyway, I've just chucked it out. I've also got my hoodie on because it's very cold today. And it's very dark and gloomy. I've had to turn the Christmas lights that are in the window on to get a bit more of a glow, make it a bit nicer in here. So anyway, I've just finished chapter 7. I know that in the last catch-up video I said I was going to carry on reading a little bit yesterday afternoon. Well, I ended up not doing that. So I've only just read chapter 7 now, and this is like basically Poirot and the 2 other detectives basically all just sitting there and discussing what they think about the passengers. So they've completely ruled out the other cards, although the maid did come into this one. So this is what I'm getting at, okay? I'm still on it being Lady Harbury, but they're not seeing it. So they are saying it's either Dr. Bryant, who was sat directly next to Poirot, which, you know, he could have put the dart, because as we know, the dart was found tucked into Poirot's, what's it called, chair. So he could have done that. He could easily turn around and could have used the blowpipe. So, I mean, yeah, he could do. Also, he's a doctor. He would have known about like the snake venom because it's used in like research. So there's a high probability that it's him. They've also said that it could have been Daniel Clancy because he was the only passenger to go to the back of the plane. So he's the writer of detective stories, and he'd already said that he had a blowpipe. But I'm thinking, you wouldn't just come out and say, oh, I had a blowpipe myself. So yeah, I kind of feel like, I mean, yes, Dr. Bryant possibly could have done, but I still think that Lady Harbury has the most reason for killing Madame Giselle. She has the most reason to. She's very wealthy, so could easily have been one of Madame Giselle's clients. So I'm still rooting for her being the one. But then that was like in the first 20 pages that I started saying it was her, just because of the maid. So, but they're not picking up on this maid. They haven't said anything about the maid going to the back of the plane. So I'm thinking, is this just too obvious? Are we meant to, as the reader, be sat here going, but what about the maid? But then it's got nothing to do with it. That's what I'm thinking, because it is an Agatha Christie. We're meant to be picking on different people as a suspect, and then the big reveal happens when Poirot says, actually, no, it's not that person. And you're like, oh yeah, because then he gives out all the information about as to why it is the person who it is. So it could just be a little game that Agatha Christie was playing with us when she was writing this book. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm still saying Lady Harbury, okay? I'm still saying it. But then I'm thinking maybe it's just too obvious. I'm not clever enough to be able to really solve these. But then they aren't mentioning the maid. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to continue reading. It is just gone up to 11 o'clock. So I reckon I can probably do 1 or 2 chapters now before lunch, possibly. We shall see. But I'm enjoying the story as well, actually, to be fair. I don't know if I've said that, but I am enjoying the story. So yeah, so it's all good. So yeah, I didn't do any like clips when I went to my nanny granddad's last night, but this morning, usually I have been doing a walk each morning, but this morning it was still really, really dark and I was not feeling it. So I sat and watched an episode of Gilmore Girls instead, whilst cuddled up with the cats. And then I got showered and put some like loungewear. I don't know how you describe, like just loungewear. And then my hoodie on over the top, because I was like, it's a chilly day today. It's very dark and grey outside. So let's get some Agatha Christie read. So yeah, I mean, this evening we're going to Paul's parents for dinner, but I'm kind of hoping that I can get this done before the end of the day, but we shall see. We shall see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's my little update at the moment. I'm still saying Lady Harbury, but I reckon there's a high chance that I'm completely wrong. We shall see. Okay, so chapter 8. I'm still in the middle of this. Okay, so chapter 8, we have the list of belongings from each passenger. Now, the two people that I can, from the list of belongings, I'm thinking, oh, hang on a minute. There's James Ryder, who is sat directly in front of Madame Giselle as well. He had in his belongings a letter from his business partner saying that he's hoping the loan was successfully negotiated. So could this be a loan that he was setting up with Madame Giselle? And also in Daniel Clancy's case, he had some research on poisoning. He had like a load of research. He obviously is writing a detective novel. But he also had 4 unpaid bills. So did he go to Madame Giselle asking for a bit of a loan? But he's not like a sort of person that would go to her. She always had like rich, proper high up in society type of people. So those are the two. But we just got to a point where I think Poirot is going to say who he thinks it is. So he's basically said that he thinks that he's got an idea. And he says, and they're like saying, how can this list advance us much? And he says, not by itself, but taken in conjunction with certain features of the case. No, well, it may be that I'm wrong, quite wrong. And they're saying, come out with your theory. So here we go. So it says, no, as you say, it is a theory only. I hope to find a certain object on that list. There be, and I have found it. It is there, but it seems to point in the wrong direction. The right clue on the wrong person. That means there's much work to be done, and truly there's much that is still obscure to me. I cannot see my ways, only contain facts that seem to stand out, to arrange themselves in a significant pattern. You do not find it so? No, I say you do not. Let us then each work to his own idea. I have no certainty, I tell you, only a certain suspicion. I thought he was going to say that he was... Right, okay, so the 2 detectives departed, left Poirot on his own. Poirot remained for a time as in a dream, then he rose, cleared away any trace of disorder, emptied the ashtrays and straightened the chairs. He went to a side table and picked up a copy of the sketch. He turned the pages until he came to the one he sought. 2 sun worshippers. It was headed The Countess of Horbury and Mr. Raymond's Barrowclough at Le Pinette. He looked at the 2 laughing figures in bathing dresses, their arms entwined. I wonder, one might do something along those lines. Yes, one might. Countess of Horbury, Lady Horbury. I've been saying that all this blimmin' time. So maybe he's starting to think it's her, but obviously there's no specific evidence for that. So I'm starting to think that he's kind of persuaded that it's Lady Horbury, but yeah, interesting, because her case didn't really have anything in it that could be that suspicious, unlike James Ryder and Daniel Clancy's. Like I was saying, there's only those 2 where they had suspicious stuff in there. But then obviously Poirot was like, I think I figured it out but it's the wrong thing in the wrong person's case or something like that. So although obviously, yeah, James Ryder and Daniel Clancy was in 2 that had something in their cases that I thought was kind of suspicious, I was like, it's a bit, far-fetched. Still thinking Lady Horbury, because that's not changed. I don't think that's going to change at all. And now, but we are only page 116, so we've got all this to go. Could I be right? Or is there too much left of the story for it to completely change and there be a massive twist? We shall have to see. Okay, very quick update. I've just read chapters 9 and 10. So chapters 9, Poirot and detectives were visiting Madame Giselle's office and met her aide, Elise. Now, Elise was obviously given the information that she had to burn all these papers of Madame Giselle's property if she heard anything that had happened to Madame Giselle. So she'd burnt all these papers, but she did have a little black book and she gives that over. In there is some like information in regards to meetings and that sort of thing. And one of the meetings she had was in Le Pinette at the casino. So she goes to the casino at 10:30, Savoy Hotel at 5 o'clock, ABC Fleet Street at 11 o'clock. So the casino, we know, is where Jane Grey and Norman Gale were. That's how they met. That's, you know, obviously it was Gale that allowed Grey to have the winnings. So we know that they were at the casino, the same casino where Madame Giselle was. So could it be that they were working together? Do they meet up with her in this casino? Is that what the appointment was? I mean, neither of them are very well-to-do or wealthy, so not Madame Giselle's usual clientele, but we're kind of seeing things pointed that way, but we're not being given a straight answer. At the end of this chapter, it's the end of chapter 10, Poirot does say about how Madame Giselle's plane ticket was booked, and Elise actually booked it via the Universal Airlines, via their own office, and he makes a point of writing down the address of that, where he puts the number 254 Boulevard de Capucine into his little book, which I'm intrigued by why. So it's given like two possibilities, a further possibility of two suspects, of possibly Grey and Gale working together. I'm still gonna go. My hunch is still with Lady Harbury. How do you say her name? Yeah, Harbury. So we'll see how it carries on. Okay, so chapter 11, we had quite a bit of information, extra information. So they are interviewing Georges, who is like the butler for Madame Giselle, and he basically says that a woman did come to see her the night before. They're also going through the little black book. They've got English Perez's husband that Poirot thinks is Harbury, and that possibly the husband was either going to pay the loan or there was a secret that Madame Giselle could tell the husband, which was the blackmail. And then there's forged antiques, which could relate to the Dupont father and son. Also, we get told that the blowpipe was possibly bought from this antiques dealer, so that also puts the Duponts on the list. But then the guy in the antiques dealership does say that Dupont knows him, but also says that it's an American man who came to buy the blowpipe. But then the darts are a different colour, so Poirot is trying to guess whether it was even the same blowpipe. Then they go and see the airline office. They go to the airline's office and they get told by the bloke who runs the office that he was paid by an American man to basically make sure that Madame Giselle was in seat 2 on that particular flight, and he was going to be in seat 1, and his name was Silas Harper. But it seems like it was a disguise. And then at the end of the chapter, Poirot is kind of thinking about whether Lady Harbury could have been either paying someone or had persuaded someone to go in this American disguise to basically try and make sure that Madame Giselle was on a specific flight at a specific time. So we've got this American person, but it could be someone in disguise as an American person. And I kind of feel like the Duponts knew the antiques dealer and there is a link to them, but I still don't think it was them. I'm still with Lady Harbury, but I think it's too obvious. So yeah, we've kind of got the Duponts there. We'll just have to keep going and keep trying to solve this. Hello, it's the same day. I've just put some clothes on. They're still comfy clothes because we're going to Paul's parents for dinner once I finished work. So yeah, I've just chucked some clothes on out of the loungewear. So a bit of an update in regards to this. I mean, I'm past halfway mark, so there is that. So I've kind of read chapters 12 13, 14 and 15. So we've got 4 chapters just to summarise quickly. So chapter 12, we're kind of seeing the relationship between Lady Harbury and her husband Stephen Harbury. So they're estranged. They kind of live separately, and he's quite annoyed with her because they have a mortgage on the house because of her. So he's kind of saying about her gambling problems and things. And at one point we see him run into Venetia Kerr. So they live quite close together. And it's obvious that she loves Stephen and he loves her, but they've never tried to be together. So I don't believe there has been an affair as such. And then chapter 13, we're following Jane, and we're kind of seeing that afterwards. She's a hairdresser, so she has all of the ladies that live nearby wanting to come to her and have her as their hairdresser to basically get all the information in regards to the murder on the plane. So in this chapter, we're kind of following her, and we see that she runs into one of the DuPonts, so the son, who is called Jean, and he's like kind of questioning why has there been an arrest yet? Does she have any information? I kind of feel like it's a bit of a weird coincidence that he just happens to be sat across from her. I just kind of thought it was a bit odd. And in chapter 14, we're then following Normangale, and with him, he's a dentist and nobody wants to be seen by him for their dentistry. He's basically getting a lot of clients just calling up and cancelling their appointments. They don't want to be near him because they're kind of questioning whether he's the killer. And he's obviously seeing Jane Grey now. And as they're out and about, they see Clancy. And so they decide to follow him. And they're following Daniel Clancy as he's basically talking to himself. He seems to be quite erratic and all over the place and just walking around chatting away to himself, and they're following him. And then they run into Poirot outside Clancy's house, and Poirot, this goes into chapter 15. Poirot basically says to Jane, you come into the house, we'll question Daniel Clancy together, just pretend to be my assistant. And when they go in there, like, Daniel Clancy seems to be quite nervous, but I don't know whether he's like nervous because he's got something to hide. I think it's that he's just a bit all over the place. I don't know. It just seems a bit odd. I kind of feel like he's not the killer though. I kind of feel like there's this emphasis on him being a bit like not sound of mind, which kind of puts me off the belief of him being the killer. I mean, obviously, I reckon there's a strong chance that I might be completely wrong with this. There's still a part of me that still thinks Lady Horbury, but then we're now seeing quite a bit of emphasis on Jane and Norman. So there is still that idea that maybe they could be doing it together because they did come across Madame Giselle whilst they were in the casino on holiday. So yeah, it's just more questions, really. Just more questions. So, quick summary of those few chapters. It has now gone 4 o'clock. I might have like a little break and then read a couple more chapters in a bit. I feel like my brain is frying. So I kind of feel like I'm not going to finish this today. So this probably is going to go into tomorrow, but that's fine. It is what it is. So it might be running across 3 days, this vlog. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm just feeling a bit sleepy now. I kind of feel like I need a little bit of a break from trying to use my brain. So I might have like an hour's break and then possibly read a couple of chapters and see how it goes from there. See if I've got any other ideas on who could be the killer. Hello, it's another day. We are now on Thursday and I'm working in the office again. So I thought I'd give you a little update because I've read chapter 16, 17 and 18. So I'm kind of like grouping those 3 together. Chapter 16, Poirot basically wants Grey and Gale to help. So that's Norman Gale and Jane Grey. He basically wants Gale to send a letter to Lady Harbury to blackmail her. Now, he seems to have eliminated Clancy, Grey and Gale. But then I don't know whether he's just saying that to Gale to kind of make him think that he's not on the suspect list. And it could be like a little trick. But I'm pretty certain it's not them and it's not Clancy. So it could be a test, but I'm not seeing it as a test. It kind of seems like Poirot has eliminated them three. And then chapter 17, he then visits Henry Mitchell, who is the senior steward. And is basically asking if there was anything left on the desk. And he said, I don't remember, like the desk in front of Madame Giselle. But he does say that Albert Davis, who's the second steward, has been acting, very excited about the whole thing and has been telling lots of people about the murder and all of that sort of thing. So Poirot goes and sees Albert Davis next. And Davis does say he noticed that there was 2 teaspoons on the saucer with the coffee. But he did then go on to say, it could have been our error, but I did think it was a bit odd. But kind of like, I'm not really getting anything from the stewards, that much from the stewards, like either of them. So I'm not so sure about it being them. And then chapter 18, Poirot goes and visits James Ryder. Now, James Ryder is not a nice person. He's very obnoxious, very up himself. I don't like him. Now, he didn't get the loan, and Poirot does question him about that. So you know how I said previously, when they went through the list of their belongings, he had a letter to say that he didn't. So he had a letter from his business partner asking him, basically saying that he hopes he gets the loan sorted. So Poirot then questions him about that, and he seems to be like, that's none of your business. He's very, not really wanting to help the police. He's saying that it's going to ruin him and his business. It's all suspicious because he was sat directly in front of the body. So but he did make some money by going to the newspaper, so he just doesn't seem like a nice person anyway. So it's kind of like Poirot is trying to think that possibly it is James Ryder. I kind of feel like he's up there in my list of suspicions. Now, with the whole chapter 16 with Gale sending a letter to blackmail Lady Harbury, I'm not sure whether that's Poirot's way of eliminating her or treating her as a suspect. I think at the moment it's between 2 people for me. Still Lady Harbury and also James Ryder. He's kind of moved up on my suspect list, and I've taken off Daniel Clancy. Although he does seem a bit all over the place. It seems a bit strange, there's something odd about him. That could just be his character in general. I don't know. So it's interesting. So now I've got 2 main suspects still. So let's carry on with this and see what the next few chapters gives us. Okay, read a further 3 chapters, 19, 20 and 21. And I think I have a possible other suspect. So I'll come back to my theory on the suspect. Let's just recap on those chapters. So chapter 19, Poirot makes Norman Gale dress up, go over to Lady Harbury, pretending to be someone else, saying that he can basically have proof that she was having an affair because she doesn't want her husband, Stephen Harbury, to find out because they would have to get divorced and she wouldn't have any money, all of this. So that was what Madame Giselle was blackmailing her about. And she basically couldn't give the money back because she was gambling it all away. And then Poirot then goes and visits her. I kind of feel like he's eliminating her a little bit in this chapter, which is then making me really confused. He's kind of almost eliminating her, even though she definitely has more motive than everyone else. But then we'll come back to motives in a minute. Chapter 20, we have Detective Japp, who is obviously the detective on the case. He visits Dr. Bryant. So we're not seeing Poirot's questioning in this situation. We're seeing the detectives. And he figures out that Dr. Bryant knows 3 people, one of which he is very friendly with, who would be able to have access to the snake venom that would have killed Madame Giselle. So, interesting. Chapter 21, Detective Japp and Poirot get together to discuss their findings. So, in Japp's findings, he doesn't believe that it's the Duponts, the father and son. But he then goes on to say that maybe it's Clancy because of the way he's like talking to himself, and Poirot is like, well, maybe he's just discussing in his head about a plot on a book. It's kind of like not enough evidence or facts there. Detective Japp doesn't know anything about Lady Harbury. He can't really make up his mind, but he thinks that it's either Dr. Bryant or James Ryder. Now, Poirot believes the following people have motive: Clancy, Bryant, Ryder, and Lady Harbury. Like, have motive to want to do the killing. So, obviously, I kind of have taken Clancy off. But, you know, Bryant, Ryder, and Harbury are the 3 people on my list. Now, I've added a 4th person who wasn't on the plane that we know of. So, I keep coming back to the fact that this maid entered the back of the plane and went past Madame Giselle to get a bag for Lady Harbury. Now, my new theory is, what if that maid was not Lady Harbury's maid, but Elise, who was Madame Giselle's maid? Now, we know that she burnt a load of documents as soon as she found out that Madame Giselle had been murdered. And you have to remember the people at the front of the plane, they never got questioned. They just got let off the plane. Nothing was said to them. And the maid had been sat in the front. So they never really questioned the maid. There was no question about whether the maid was genuinely Lady Harbury's maid, or whether it could have just been anyone pretending to be her maid. So I'm thinking maybe this was Elise. Now, Elise has definitely got motive, because we know that she was aware that she was going to get some money when Madame Giselle died. So we know that she was aware of that. And I'm starting to think that there could possibly be this situation where, because the people in the front of the plane all got left to leave, they were allowed to leave, basically, nobody got questioned. And there's just been no mention about this maid who went to the back of the plane. And I'm like, well, why is this not being mentioned? And then I'm thinking, because Lady Harbury just kind of dismissed her maid, didn't really speak to her as such, just took the bag off her, just went, because she just basically looked down at her maid anyway, she wouldn't have necessarily have been focusing on the face and things like that. So, and there was this notion, like this when Madame Giselle was first on the plane, just looking out of the window, you know, she may not have even noticed that her maid was coming back. Oh, her maid could have been in disguise, something like that. So I'm starting to think that maybe, now could Elise be working with Lady Harbury? I don't know, but I'm starting to think maybe this is Elise, because the fact that this maid is just not getting any mention, the maid that was on the plane, just seems very suspect to me. So this is my new theory, that it's maybe Elise. Whether she's working with Lady Harbury or not, I'm not sure. But it's interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting. Now, Poirot hasn't said anything about Elise as such. So, again, I could be totally wrong. But I don't know, there's something about it that I'm just like, I'm just connecting dots here. Putting 2 and 2 together. let's see. Let's carry on and let's see. Okay, very quick update. So I'm halfway through chapter 23. So chapter 22 didn't really have much of interest, just that Jane has become Poirot's secretary and she used to go with the DuPonts on an archaeological gig because he just wants some information on the DuPonts. Some more information, I believe. Chapter 23, it is the person who, I think it's one of the detectives, and Poirot sat there discussing, and they get a telephone call to say that the daughter has arrived and they're just about to go and see the daughter of Madame Giselle, which has made me think, what if it was the daughter pretending to be the maid? Basically, I know that it's the maid that did the killing. But whether it's Elise pretending to be Lady Harbury's maid, whether it is genuinely Lady Harbury's maid doing it for Lady Harbury, or whether it's the daughter pretending to be a maid, all I know is that it's that maid. Now, I'm not sure, I don't know where the daughter has come from. I don't know yet about that, but maybe she had someone working with her. I'm not sure. But it's definitely the bloody maid, okay? Whoever it was, either disguised as a maid or what, that went into the second cart, killed Madame Giselle. That's what it is, isn't it? That's what it is. I just got to figure out who the blooming maid is, as we know female. So let's just get all the males off the list. But they could be an accessory to murder because they could have told this woman to do it. I'm not sure. I'm taking the males off the list. And we're either going to go with Lady Harbury and she uses her maid to do the killing, or Madame Giselle's maid herself, Elise, does it, or the daughter does it. I mean, both Madame Giselle's maid and her daughter both get money if Madame Giselle dies. And we all know that, you know, money does horrendous things to people. Causes a lot of arguments, that sort of thing. So, we're going to see. But I know it's the maid. I just need to figure out who the maid is. Or who it is that's disguised as a maid. So those are my three options. But I know it's the maid. Simple as that. Let's carry on. Let's see what the daughter has to say. Okay, still in chapter 23. Oh, the excitements of this. So they're speaking with the daughter, known as Anne Richards. And she basically says that for a time she was a manicurist. She's also been in a dressmaker's establishment. So she's been living in America. And, it kind of just made me think. So, when Lady Harbury asked for her maid, it was because she snapped her nail and she needed a nail file. And so the maid came running through, got the bag, brought it over to Lady Harbury so she could use the nail file to sort out her nails. Daughter was a manicurist. Did they meet via that? Do they put two and two together? Is it the daughter and Lady Harbury working together? Oh, let's find out. Okay, so we've had a bit of a revelation at the end of chapter 24. This is interesting. Very, very interesting. Here we have it. Okay, so Poirot's talking with Jane. They're having a little conversation about Anne Richards, or was more so basically Madame Giselle's daughter, talking about her, and he sits there and he's like trying to think, why does her face look so familiar? And then he suddenly remembers. And in the airplane on the day of the murder, Lady Horbury sent for her to get a nail file. Anne Morsett was Lady Horbury's maid. I called it. That's what I said. I said the blooming maid, and then I was like, the daughter was pretending to be the maid. Well, I was trying to work out who the maid was nice. So it was either the daughter or Madame Giselle's own maid, or it was Lady Horbury's maid doing it for Lady Horbury. But my main was that it's something to do with the daughter, and was like, oh yeah, she must have been like the maid or something. This is what Poirot has just said. Now, does this mean that this is the actual killer? Let's find out, but I'm pretty certain. I think I've cracked it. I mean, I cracked it in the first, I knew it was the maid and was trying to figure out who the hell the maid is. So when did I say the daughter was? That was in chapter 23, when they just go to, just before, well, they basically get told the daughter is now there and they're able to go and see her to interview her. And then it suddenly like clicked, and I was like, hang on a minute. We could be wrong still. I mean, Agatha Christie does do her little twists, doesn't she? So we're going to read on and we're going to see. Okay, I was wrong. Agatha Christie fooled me again. So the maid was Anne, which is Madame Giselle's daughter, but she wasn't meant to be on that plane, and it wasn't her that did the killing. I'm not fully sure of how much she was implemented in it, but she was kind of tricked by Norman Gale. So Norman Gale knew there was this money involved, and so his plan was to persuade Anne to marry him. So his name is actually Richards. So when her married name was Anne Richards, it was actually him that she had married. So he'd managed to persuade her to get married quickly, and so the idea was that she would inherit the money after her mother had passed away, and then he would obviously get that money through marriage. Nasty bugger. The whole thing with Jane Grey, she was not involved. She just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. She had fallen for him, and they ended up being on the plane. But he didn't want that to ruin his plans. So he did it by going to the toilet at one point and changing into like a steward's outfit, then walk into the back of the plane, pretending to give a spoon to Madame Giselle, which is why there was 2 spoons, and then had killed her by putting it into her neck. The blowpipe was just a disguise. The wasp was what was there to cause like a distraction. Then he went back, took off his coat, got back to his seat, and was able to do it within a matter of a couple of minutes. And then for the evidence, it turns out that he had worked on a snake farm, so he knew all about the snake poison, was able to get to it. Yeah. I know I said that, there's a possibility that him and Jane Grey were working together on this, but it turns out that's not the case. So the whole idea of him dressing up and going to blackmail Lady Horbury was a case of Poirot trying to figure out, a bit more information about Norman Gale. And he basically wanted it to be almost like obvious that it was Lady Horbury, because he made sure they were on the same plane together. He had known that Lady Horbury had borrowed money. I think he found out from Anne, or he managed to find out somehow anyway. So the idea was that it was going to be Lady Horbury that would get, accused of the murder. So, yeah, I was very wrong. Very wrong. I mean, I was right in thinking, the maid played a prominent part because she wasn't mentioned at all, but obviously she got recognised. because Poirot remembered seeing her as the maid. So that's why I got all excited. But obviously I celebrated too soon because I was wrong. Again, I think this is always happening with Agatha Christie's books. I did so much work on this, okay? So look at this, right? So we've got pages and pages of writing going on here. I was taking so many notes. I was doing, you know, my suspect thing and cross them off, put them number one suspects. But yeah, I didn't get as far as fully convincing myself that it was Norman Gale. But apparently he was the one that was pretending to be the American to order the blowpipes. Like, he was the one, yeah, I don't know. There's some things that I'm just like, I don't really fully get how you're meant to figure it out before Poirot, because like things like the snake farm, that was only in the reveal that we knew that. If we had known sooner, then we would have been like, it's Norman Gale. So Christie does this thing where she definitely holds back on some of the information, ready for the reveal. So we are always in, you know, it's going to be harder for us because she holds so much back so that she could do this like massive twist at the end. But yeah, this one had me. I like the fact that there was a wasp that was involved. I love the setting that it was on a plane as well. I did actually quite enjoy this book. I think this is a really good book. I think this is probably like one of my favourite Agatha Christie's. So yeah, I'm really pleased that I read this. You know, obviously I'm sad that I didn't solve it before Poirot, but you know, Agatha Christie is the queen of crime fiction. She knew what she was doing when she was writing all of these books. The next one is going to be the ABC Murders. So that'll be the next book that I'm reading. I'm probably going to do it in February. I think February is going to be when I do the next episode for this series. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. It was very much a talking video because obviously it's just going through the book together, and yeah, it's just all my thoughts and what's happening chapter by chapter. And so yeah, this is obviously a very spoilery video, so I will put that on the bio, don't worry. I mean, you would have been able to tell by now if you got this far into the video that obviously it was a spoilery video, but that is the case with these ones. I think it's the only video type that I do that has spoilers. Like all my reading vlogs, things like that, I purposely don't put spoilers in. But the Agatha Christie ones, they definitely do contain spoilers. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. So very much for watching. If you can, please do like and subscribe. But yeah, I will be back very soon with another video. Bye for now.